Everyone, good afternoon and welcome to my panelists. So as we heard in the introduction there, global life expectancy is happily on the rise. It has nearly doubled over the past century alone. Your Royal Highness, first, where do you see the biggest opportunities for further improvement over the next 25 to 30 years?
Can you hear me? I think now it's perfect. Thank you all for inviting me to speak today. As you all know, today aging science is a reality. Extending lifespan as we speak today is not what we are trying to focus on. We're trying to focus on health span. Just to try to explain to the non-scientists here, aging science is trying to understand the biology of aging, what are the causes of increasing of age-related diseases, and why do people across the globe get sick when they age. The opportunity that you mentioned is heavily based on how do we accelerate science, how do we increase drug discovery through understanding the biology of aging, and third, how do we bring along the international community, especially policymakers, to advocate and to adopt a lot of the policies that are needed to decrease age-related diseases. Now, the opportunities across the value chain, all the way from supporting basic science, investing in biotech companies that will help developing interventions, and lastly, how do you take it to the consumer? We at Hevolution Foundation, we are a non-profit organization that focuses on aging science. We heavily work on moving the science from the bench to consumers. We're working with a lot of scientists across the globe, biotech companies, to hopefully intervene and decrease age-related diseases that will eventually extend healthy lifespan.
And Alex, at In Silico, you are developing drugs using AI. The company has 31 drug programs targeting 29 different disease areas. Can you share an AI-enabled drug breakthrough that will dramatically change the trajectory of aging over the next decade?
Sure. So at In Silico, we have many different programs across multiple different diseases. And as Dr. Haya highlighted, we are focused on extending the productive portion of life. Yeah. So unfortunately, in the traditional drug discovery and development paradigm, you need to develop a drug for a disease first before you repurpose it into aging. And but at the same time, the beauty of drug discovery is that if the drug works on aging, most likely it will work in a variety of diseases. So what we started doing at In Silico, we started looking for dual-purpose therapeutics that work in a specific disease, or likely to work in a specific disease, but may be repurposed for aging later on. So we're looking at this kind of Venn diagram, looking for targets, protein targets, and drugs that may work in the disease and work on aging at the same time across a variety of disease areas. I think that the major breakthrough and milestone in drug discovery will be when the first AI-discovered drug will get approved, and second, where it gets repurposed and demonstrates age reversal, so credible reversal of aging biomarkers in a real clinical trial. So far at In Silico, my latest program that reached clinical trials has completed phase 2A clinical trial in idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. That's a chronic lung disease, very deadly, and usually hits after 65. We have completed a trial in 71 patients already and published the data in a journal called Nature Medicine, releasing the data, showing a very promising trend in increase in forced vital capacity. So let's see if it sustains in a larger clinical trial. And during that trial, we also measured biomarkers of aging, aging clocks using proteomics. So hopefully we'll be able to surprise you with another publication.
Wow.
Inshallah, hoping, hope to see some age reversal there. So if that happens, that will be the full cycle from the discovery of the therapeutic target and disease modeling using aging biology, all the way to molecular design, all the way to clinical trials, all the way to disease, and then demonstration of age reversal. So inshallah, we'll be able to do that at in silico. If not, somebody else is going to do it.
Fantastic. There's a lot to be optimistic about, it sounds. Sophie, there's an interesting tension in that globally, women on average live longer than men. And yet, particularly in the Western world, longevity science and conversations have both been led by and focused on men. Why is that?
So I think if you look at the science on longevity as it's defined today, so not just the number of years in a life, but the number of healthy years in a life, lifespan and health span, there's the assumption that if you have 80 years, 60 of those may be healthy, and the last 25% of your life will be in relative ill health. But actually, this assumption only applies to men. Men experience perhaps the first 70% of their lives in relatively good health, and the last 30% in decline due to things like chronic health conditions. Women, conversely, spend the middle 60% of their lives in relative ill health due to hormonal changes, diagnostic delays, autoimmune conditions, etc., and the last 30% of their lives in relatively good health. So when we think about health span in women, we're actually not talking about necessarily extending into the final 30% of a person's life. We're talking about the middle 60%. It's not about extending life, it's about reclaiming it. So until we see the science of longevity broadened to think about, for example, how we provide mandated postpartum care to women and pelvic health, so pelvic floor rehabilitation after women have children, until we think about perimenopause and support into kind of postmenopausal years, we actually won't be thinking about health span effectively in the context of women.
That's so interesting. And Dr. Haya, Hevolution has an annual funding capacity of up to $1 billion, I believe, making it one of the largest funders globally in the field. Can you talk to us a bit about your criteria for allocating money and maybe one or two investments that you're most excited about right now?
So Hevolution Foundation, for the audience, just to introduce Hevolution, we are a non-profit organization that's global, headquartered in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The reason why it's called Hevolution, because it means health evolution. So how do we help promoting or developing more healthy outcomes for a human being? Now, what we do in very simple terms is we try to understand the biology of aging. And as I mentioned in the previous question, is aging science is a reality today. There are very well-defined molecular pathways that work in a very complex interactive approach that actually causes accelerated aging. And what I mean about accelerated aging is aging that is caused due to the development of disease that eventually causes at least 10 years of our life living in having disease. So what Hevolution is there to do is, one is we want to understand the aging biology. We want to support basic science through our grants and partnership programs. So we fund extramural funding of aging science. Second, we are going to have very, very soon translational activities, meaning we're going to have research activities that will help take what we see in the bench into clinical trials. We also have our investment arm, which is our biotech arm. This is, we focus on preclinical, our portfolio focuses on preclinical biological intervention companies. And lastly, we do have our medical function. And our medical function supports taking everything that I mentioned into clinic. How do we develop protocols that can support clinicians in diagnosing accelerated aging. Obviously, everything that I mentioned is, if you see it in a diagram or visually, it is a value chain. So we actually support everything starting from basic science all the way to clinical trials. We want to attract pharma, and what we do is attracting pharma through our biotech outcomes. Today, we have invested in 4 companies, all related to the pathways of aging. All four, in different capacities, are almost entering clinical trials, and some of them have. This is a proud moment for us at Hevolution. In terms of our grant program, we already have $400 million dollars already committed across geographies, including the US, UK, and the Kingdom, and we're expanding to other scientists across the globe. Today, Hevolution is trying to catalyze the field, trying to bring people along. We always say that we are the catalysts, and we're hopeful that we move the science. And our ultimate outcome is if we can bring this to the global agenda as a challenge that we see today. As maybe you all know, today across the globe, non-communicable diseases are at rise, especially in older age groups. If you look at the Kingdom specifically, we are a very young country. We have young population. 65% of Saudis are actually below 30. But what you see today is the onset of non-communicable diseases is as young as 30-year-olds. So they start developing cardiovascular disease as young as that age. So biology plays a big role. We're, as Hevolution, mandated to understand all these observations and hopefully support the globe in this initiative.
And Sophie, talking about geography and the region, your company, NABTA, is headquartered here in the Middle East, and it provides digital solutions for women's healthcare. What are some of the specific challenges that you face with serving women in this region?
I think possibly the largest challenge is that today we have a huge gap when it comes to data for women in the Middle East and Africa.
Of all ages, women of all ages?
All ages and stages. So women were excluded from clinical trials until 1993 globally, meaning that today, for example, it takes 4 times longer on average to diagnose women with the same chronic conditions as men, even though they're twice as likely to see a doctor in the first place. This is then compounded in the region by the fact that 92% of clinical trials occur in the US and Europe, and still the remaining 8% mostly occur in places like Korea and Japan, where they have to be demographically representative, which means that fewer than 1% of clinical trial participants today are women of Middle Eastern, African, and South Asian origin. And you see the effects of this. When we established our research initiative in partnership with Princess Noor University, and we spoke to the head of the lifestyle medicine laboratory there, he explained that they had done a fairly extensive study on post-operative recovery in Saudi patients. And as part of this study, they realized that almost every single parameter that we assume to be universal, from grip strength to bone density to basal metabolic rate, even normal hormone ranges, was off for Saudi populations, was wrong. And if it's off for Saudi populations, you can assume that it is off for every other ethnicity within the broader region. During the pandemic, if you were of Pakistani origin, you were 3 times more likely to die of COVID-19 just because you were Pakistani, 3 times more likely than a white Caucasian equivalent. So I think we have significant data gaps, which today have a very tangible and negative impact on health outcomes. We need more research to be done here with local populations. We need to be locally led, locally funded, and we need to be building foundation models to support, the development of new machine learning and AI algorithms to then also drive and really embed that understanding of local populations within the broader global infrastructure.
And so, Alex, when you are developing your new drugs in silico, how are you doing so in a way that ensures, as Sophie says, that they are representative of all populations, all demographics, and don't contain these biases that traditional medicine has?
Sure. Well, first of all, if you are addressing the ultimate biological process that all of us have, such as aging, the probability that you are going to be discriminating one population group over another is very low, because aging affects all of us. And I would say in drug discovery, we're playing with about maybe 3,000 protein targets that may play a role in a disease and also in aging. When you are launching a drug discovery program that you are planning to take to the clinic, you don't have a lot of choices. You can make just a few bets. So at Insilico, we made more than 30 bets, and for many industry players, they actually consider it to be too much, because a traditional biotech usually has 4 or 5 therapeutic programs. And out of those 30, I think that most of those programs are targeting fundamental biological processes that would be relevant to anybody, regardless of gender, regardless of ethnicity. So like really hardcore hallmarks of aging. For example, in the context of our phase 2 clinical trial in idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis that hits people over 65 and causes major collapse of lung function, that disease is actually more representative in females. However, when you are enrolling for a clinical trial, usually it's more or less balanced. And most other diseases would be like that. I think for phase 1 clinical trials, and we have multiple, when you are addressing a healthy population, you still prefer to go after young, healthy males because you're testing safety, and there you don't want to have any potential reproductive toxicity in females. So there is a little bit of discrimination, but maybe for the benefit. Usually the safety studies are performed in countries with the most compatibility to other nations. So by the way, one of the greatest countries to learn from in clinical trials is Australia. So in Australia, you can start clinical trials faster, you can enroll faster for safety for phase 1. The population is actually very, very responsive to clinical trials, so a lot of young people participate in those trials. And it's also very high diversity of the population there. When you're going later stage, you need to go global, and definitely you want to account for China. You want to do a trial in the US. It's a very good idea to also do a trial here in the Middle East. So there we basically try to go as broad as possible and test as broad as possible.
I've got some quick fire-ish questions now that I'm going to ask you each to give a couple of sentences of response to. So the first, and Dr. Haya, we'll start with you. What is the one policy change or innovation that you wish global leaders would act on today to improve outcomes for future generations?
Well, that's a difficult question, but for me, I think healthcare in general has to change. To be honest, today healthcare is very reactive. And from day one, since students enter medical school, they're always trained and educated to be reactive. So how can I cure disease? What do I need to do to, I get a case in the emergency and I have to treat it. So it's always about treatment. Healthcare has to completely change. The mindset has to change all the way from clinicians to policymakers to even how we conduct science today. It has to be more preventative. We have to try to intervene before it actually happens at a younger age. It's very interesting. Screening usually happens when people get older. But what we're trying to do, maybe all of us sitting here, is how do we understand the biology of aging so we can intervene as early as possible. Up to today, no one can say how young should we start screening for aging. But aging starts at a very, very young age. So it's not when you hit 60.
That's quite depressing.
No, I mean, it's evolution. It's evolution of life. What we're seeing today compared to what we see previously is today there's something that's happening that's causing a rise in disease. What we're trying to do is we're trying to understand why this is happening. I'm trying to explain it in a very simple way.
Do you have any indications at this point what could be causing this general rise in disease? Give us some examples.
I mean, there are multiple things. There are definitely biological indicators, but also there are environmental interactions that actually happen that can accelerate the biological faults or errors. What's interesting about aging and what's complex about aging is that aging within our body happens at different rates. So, for example, if I develop heart disease, that means that the cells in my heart are actually aging much quicker than cells in other organs. So what we're also trying to do here is we're trying to understand this complexity between cells, between organs, and how our whole body functions, and also how our body functions in different environments, and how we're diverse as humans. We come from different environments, different countries, different geographies. So all this amount of data has to be collected. And as my colleagues have mentioned, data is the key. The depth of biological data, the depth of demographical data, the depth of epidemiological data has to be properly collected. And as Hevolution Foundation, just giving the audience a teaser, we will be working extensively on a project, hopefully announced soon, on Saudi-specific data that will support in informing policymakers and also medical professionals.
We await to hear what that is. Alex, I'm going to come to you, and then Sophie, I have a final question for you. Alex, let's jump forward 30 years to the year 2055. How much longer can the average person be expecting to live then than they are now?
That's a tough question. I think that we need to be very optimistic. And actually, I published several papers on psychology of aging. So here is one useful piece of advice. Psychological aging is the most plastic. And the number one feature that defines how old do you feel is how long do you expect to live. So conservatively, for everybody in the audience, I don't see too many people who are kind of past the threshold where they won't be able to achieve it. So you can set your longevity expectations to maybe 130, because 122 is the record.
Wow.
122.5, so you should be able to beat that record. And also, the longer you expect to live, the younger you are going to behave. And the younger you're going to feel. So there is zero harm in setting your longevity expectations to be very long. And I think that there is a lot of evidence suggesting that we are at the cusp of major scientific discoveries in aging research. Even our company made quite a bit of progress. I don't think you should expect to see multiple dramatic miracles in the next 10 years. But in the next 20 years, oh my God.
Wow. Okay.
We're going to have many, many dramatic events. Also, the democratization of biotechnology has significantly accelerated research. So what's happening in China right now is just night and day compared to just 10 years ago. What's happening in Saudi here, thanks to the efforts of His Highness Crown Prince MBS, it's also night and day. You're experiencing it every day. So I love coming here to see the progress. And thanks, Dr. Haya, for all your efforts. UAE is also making effort. So I'm pretty sure that we're going to see massive advances in this field. 130 is a conservative estimate.
Fantastic. So, Sophie, a final question. We're in a room full of business leaders for whom the healthy aging of their workforce is an economic imperative, as well as a general social one. What can the leaders in this room be doing to support your work specifically?
Okay, so I think, especially here in Saudi, you see something that perhaps is unprecedented if you look at the landscape a decade ago. 37% of the workforce today is female, and that's increasing already. The Vision 2030 targets have been exceeded. And the same is true for many countries in the region. I think for us, if we look at healthcare in general, there are three key areas: inclusion, relevance, and affordability. There are technologies available on the market today that have the potential to bridge and close equity gaps or massively exacerbate them. When we look at what AI will do to workforces around the world, there will be massive job loss and unemployment across the board. If you take AI and automation and robotics, many of the things that are today manual, repetitive tasks will be replaced by a combination of these things. And the populations that suffer will not be the people sitting here in this room, it'll be the lower income populations in the lowest income countries in the world. So as we continue to grow and profit from the introduction and the democratization of these new technologies, what are we doing to ensure that we're raising the baseline as well? As NABTA, our objective is to do for women's health what M-Pesa did for banking, so to bring women into the system through affordable mobile-first access. But when we think about longevity, when we think about increasing both lifespan and health span, it really must be for everybody, regardless of their age, their ethnicity, their gender, or their income status.
Very important work that you're doing. Dr. Haya, Sophie, and Alex, thank you so much, and we're excited to see where your work goes in the near future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Shukran.